I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
Just Asking with Saroja Coelho. Live Saturday afternoon at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and on CBC Listen.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app for...
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at minus 5 degrees with mostly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Hello there, I'm Matt Humphrey. 2 of 3 Winnipeg schools slated for closure got a slight reprieve at City Hall today. As the CBC's Cameron McLean reports, Mayor Scott Gillingham's inner circle made some changes to the budget.
Windsor Park Pool in St. Boniface will stay open for at least 2 more summers. It's now set to remain in operation for the 2024 and 2025 seasons. That will give the city time to start consultations on a potential new aquatic facility for St. Boniface. Another outdoor pool in St. Boniface, Happyland, is still expected to close. Meanwhile, Eldon Ross Pool in Brooklands will stay open until the end of August, giving time for the city to look for potential buyers interested in keeping the pool open to the public. The Executive Policy Committee passed several changes to the budget this morning. They also added Sunday hours to the Harvey Smith Library from Labor Day to Victoria Day. The committee did not reverse a planned cut to Sunday hours at the Millennium Library. Council casts its final vote on the budget tomorrow. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg police are still on scene of the city's latest homicide. They've been at the home in the 1200 block of Selkirk Avenue since 4:30 yesterday afternoon. Police have identified the man as 56-year-old Edgar Allen Bear. They say he is from Peguis First Nation and had been living in Winnipeg. Police say they found him deceased in the house. Neighbors say they saw more than 10 police cars and dozens of police at the house last night. Anyone with video surveillance or information who could help are asked to contact police. To Ottawa now. That's the sound of dignitaries filing into the Sir John A. Macdonald building on Parliament Hill. People of all political stripes came to pay their respects to former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. Mulroney's wife and children welcomed those filing in. Members of the public are being granted access for their own viewings this afternoon. Mulroney will lie in state until Wednesday before being moved to Montreal. He died on February 29th. 2 new Auditor General reports show the government is making little progress in addressing First Nations challenges. Reports tabled by Karen Hogan tackled housing and policing in those communities. The findings show few homes are being built or maintained, and policing positions aren't being filled. Hogan says she's completely discouraged, so little has changed.
Time after time, whether in housing, policing, safe drinking water, or other critical areas, our audits of federal programs to support Canada's Indigenous peoples reveals a distressing and persistent pattern of failure.
A third report on building transportation infrastructure across the country found the program is well designed, but there's no measurement of its overall success. There's more surprising news this morning on the inflation watch. For a second month in a row, Canada's inflation rate has dropped. Statistics Canada says it fell last month to 2.8% from 2.9% in January. Peter Armstrong has your details.
Most believed Canada saw a slight uptick in price growth in February, and instead here we have CPI coming in easing even further. Remember, the central bank wants to see inflation in that 1 to 3% range, but it specifically targets the midpoint of that range at 2%. And this is one clear step closer to that midpoint. The big driver of the deceleration was food prices, which had been so stubbornly high for so long. Last month, groceries came in at 2.4%, down from 3.4%. Every single core measure that Bank of Canada watches so closely have all shown progress across the board. So if you hear a heaving sigh of relief, that's both policymakers at the central bank and variable rate mortgage holders hoping that this is enough to nudge the central bank along on its schedule to start cutting rates. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Manitoba continues to boast the lowest inflation in Canada. Last month, inflation grew by 0.9%, slightly higher than January's 0.8%. Israel says it will not launch its attack on Hamas in Rafah until an Israeli delegation meets with U.S. officials in Washington. This follows a telephone conversation between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Joe Biden. Biden says an advance on Rafah is a mistake that will claim civilians' lives. And he's sending his Secretary of State back to the region. Antony Blinken says he'll arrive looking to forge a meanwhile agreement.
The purpose is multifold. It's, of course, to push for an agreement on a ceasefire and the release of hostages. As you know, we're intensely engaged on that every single day, and we're doing everything we can to push that forward and to reach an agreement.
Meanwhile, the United States says a senior Hamas commander has been killed in an airstrike. And as the Winnipeg Jets prepare to face one of the hottest teams in the NHL, their head coach won't be there. Rick Bowness has flown back to Winnipeg for what True North says is a minor medical procedure. Associate coach Scott Arniel will be on the bench as interim head coach until Bowness returns. Just a couple of days ago, Bowness told reporters tonight's game against the Rangers, the New York Rangers, would be a true test since the Jets have struggled lately when facing top teams. Looking at the forecast, in Winnipeg, mainly sunny and windy today with temperatures around -8 this afternoon. In Brandon, mainly cloudy and windy and temperatures around -8. In Dauphin, mainly sunny with wind from the northwest, temperatures around -9. Flin Flon, a high of -12 with a mix of sun and cloud. Thompson, a mix of sun and cloud, temperatures around -20. And in Churchill, a high around -25 with blowing snow this afternoon and that blizzard tapering off. Right now, you're listening to CBC Radio 1.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM in Winnipeg, 97.9 FM in Brandon, and 100.9 FM in Thompson. Everywhere on your CBC Listen app, or perhaps you're tuning into the YouTube live stream. Hello to the folks watching on YouTube. It's Tuesday, March 19th, the first day of spring. I'm Chloe Friesen. I'm filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse. Coming up on the show, an organization in Dauphin is rushing to help 5 families from Ukraine settle here before a key federal program ends on March 31st. As well, we'll check in on how Ramadan is going in Brandon. But first up, a follow-up story to a story we shared yesterday of 2 animal rights groups trying to cancel events involving sheep, calves, and children at the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair. We'll hear from the general manager of the fair, who says that animal welfare and care are at the forefront of the event. As I mentioned yesterday on Radio Noon, we brought you the story of 2 animal rights groups trying to cancel 2 events at the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair. The Winnipeg Humane Society and Animal Justice are calling for the cancellation of the Barnyard Challenge featuring calves and sheep wrangling. Both events taking place this year at the Keystone Centre in Brandon next week. Here's some of what Caitlin Mitchell with Animal Justice had to say.
The events certainly put animals at risk of physical injury because they're being tackled, grabbed at, chased. But we also know that they cause extreme stress to these animals. You know, we're talking about calves or sheep that are placed in a loud environment with cheering crowds. They have children sometimes on their backs, grabbing onto their wool, ears, and heads, you know, or chasing and tackling calves around an arena, all while the applause happens. So, you know, you can imagine it's an incredibly distressing experience for these animals, and it's also completely unnecessary.
Today we have Mark Humphreys on the show. He's the general manager of the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba, which puts on the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair. Thank you for joining us today, Mark.
Oh, thank you for giving us a chance to speak, Zoe. Thank you for inviting us on.
Now, what's your response to what you just heard Caitlin Mitchell with Animal Justice say?
Well, the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba has welfare and safety practices at the very top of our mandate. We obviously run by and observe the Animal Care Act, which is one of the most fundamental parts and guides that we operate within, as our organisation. And last year, according to your interviewee yesterday, these 2 events didn't run. In actual fact, they did run, and we invited both the Chief Veterinary Officer and his assistants to come down and observe our show. And also, we opened the door to animal protection officers that were present throughout the entirety of the show for the entirety of the week. And as such, we ask them to report, to observe, and to give feedback where needed. And I can quite happily tell you that we did not contravene any part of the Animal Care Act whatsoever. And indeed, all our protocols and reviews came back extremely good. So it's very disappointing to hear the point of view from this group, but they're the facts.
So the claim that these events violate animal cruelty laws, you would disagree with that?
We would, yes, and obviously the Chief Veterinary Officer would, and the APO office would as well. We need to remember this is an agricultural fairground board. It's been in existence since 1879, when the Dominion Fairs came to town. We're made up of 39 volunteer directors, 150 volunteers and over, and 9 full-time staff. And the positives about this fair and these events bring over $18 million of economic spin-offs to the area. And we attract, obviously, all children of all ages to hopefully gain some education on our agricultural practices and to bridge that gap between city and rural, and to educate as softly and gently as we can along the way.
Let's talk more about these events in particular, calf scrambles as they're known in sheep wrangling, and how they're planned. What goes into the process of organizing an event like that?
Well, to all our events are committee-based. So there's a great deal of research and a great deal of planning that goes into every one of our events, not just these two. These are 2 10 to 15-minute slots of events throughout the week, just the 2 of them. And obviously, you can imagine that the fair runs from Monday until Saturday, and literally the planning starts again at the end of each fair and goes on for a full 12-month period. So we take into account, all advice given from outside and all points of interest that are given. But again, our mandate is to educate.
Now, as you mentioned, we had reported yesterday that the events were canceled in 2023, but that is incorrect. They were canceled in 2022 after a similar campaign was brought forward. Why were they canceled back in 2022, to your knowledge?
Well, that was before my time.
Right.
In actual fact, I've been just here in 2 years. So last year, obviously, it was decided by the board of directors that we were to relook at these events and to make sure that they fitted in exactly with our mandate, and also, in all fairness to every animal exhibitor that we have, to put forward in their best interests. So the events were reinvented, revitalized, renamed, and in such, actually updated to present day requirements.
Animals are a major part of the Royal Manitoba Winter Fair, and they have been for years, and agricultural in general. You mentioned some of the supports, but can you explain a little bit more about the supports that are in place during the fair to make sure that animals are well cared for?
Well, we employ a vet all week for the fair. He's on site 24/7. So sometimes we have multiple vets. In this year, we have a veterinary officer that's there. We also have 24-hour supervision of the animals. So obviously we have volunteers and directors and staff that actually bed down in the Canadian so that we're not too far away from any of our animal friends to make sure that they've got the supervision while on site. Stringent requirements from either Equestrian Canada to all the breed societies for cattle shows and sheep, are again mandated through our protocols and bylaws to make sure that everybody is operating as they should do. We reach out and applaud Winnipeg Humane Society Action for Animals for all the good work they do. We realise that there are places that obviously don't operate in this way, and we need these groups of people to be policing events and to also be policing, what happens with puppy farms and various other odious extravagantal experiences that are happening with animals on the street today. But here, rest assured that we have a board of directors that are committed to safe practices and to the animal welfare.
Mark, lastly, let's talk about the Winter Fair overall. What does it all bring to Brandon as an entire event? You mentioned a lot of people, but what else would you say?
Well, over the many years that we've had, we've probably brought over since its existence well over 10 million people to Brandon over its entirety. And, everybody should remember that on a daily basis, we're all connected to an agriculturist or a farmer somehow. Whether you're a vegan, a vegetarian, a carnivore, herbivore, no matter who you are in society, we all have to eat. And predominantly our farmers and agriculturalists started this fair and started this organization. And we bring that connection, from rural to city. So that's our mandate, chiefly across the board. Come and experience what it's like to watch these magnificent athletes compete in the arena, all our equestrian friends. Come and see the animals on display, whether it's through egg production, pork production, beef production, and come and get some of that egg experience for the youngsters so that we can hopefully bridge that misunderstanding and miscommunication that's developing now. And unfortunately, the distance between 4 and 6 people being on a quarter section of farming has long since gone. And that connection between our fair, we believe is really needed. We would like the public to be involved. We would like their interest, but also, there's two sides to every story. Come and witness the fair. Come and see all the protocols in place, and come and see what a fantastic show it is.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us today on Radio Noon.
Thank you for the interest.
Mark Humphreys is the General Manager of the Provincial Exhibition of Manitoba. The Royal Manitoba Winter Fair takes place at the Keystone Centre in Brandon and begins on March 25th.
Ashern, Ericsdale, we want to get to know you a little better. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to your communities March 18th to 22nd. Come and share the stories of your home with me. I'm Bryce Hoy. Let's get to know each other. Communities in Focus. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
The time is 12:16. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, 97.9 in Brandon, and everywhere on the CBC Listen app, or perhaps you're tuning in on our CBC Manitoba YouTube stream. Hello. Thank you to Travis Peterson, who is making that live stream happen, and Dylan Longhurst is our tech and director behind the boards today. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse. Still lots to come on the show. A key federal program that helps Ukrainians settle ends on March 31st. We'll hear what that means for a Dauphin organization that's helped over 60 families settle since the war started. As well, Ramadan is underway and coming up at 12:15, or a bit past because it's 12:17. We'll hear from the president of the Brandon Islamic Center about what Ramadan is like for families in rural communities this year. That and a lot more coming up. Let's take a look at your weather. It's going to be below seasonal and windy for southern Manitoba. Winds northwest from 40 to 60, and we could actually see gusts to 70 or higher later tonight. That wind has been causing issues in Churchill, where the snowfall is tapering off, but those wind gusts have been up to 80 kilometers an hour, and those will taper off tonight. Some temperatures across the province. Churchill sitting at minus 27. Flin Flon, you're sunny at minus 17. Portage at the airport, partly cloudy, minus 5. And here in Winnipeg at the Forks, it is minus 5. Muslims in Manitoba are fasting for Ramadan this month. The holy month is observed by around 25,000 Muslims in the province and nearly 2 billion worldwide. And there's a lot going on in rural communities. Joining us now is Amir Farouk, the president of the Brandon Islamic Center. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What is Ramadan like for your community in Brandon this year?
Ramadan is like the same in Brandon as other communities in Manitoba, like in Winnipeg and also in other places in Canada. So like fasting in the month of Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it's obligatory every Muslim, male and female, to do the fasting. The fasting time is this year is starting from dawn. It ends mostly eating 6:30 in the morning, and we break the fasting at daily basis, mostly at 7:40 or 7:45. It's going towards with the sunset. Yes.
Oh, I was going to ask what the community is like in Brandon during Ramadan. How has it been fasting alongside others?
Community is enjoying living in Brandon, and our Muslim community in Brandon is also growing. So every, I think, month, 2 or 3 new families, Muslim families are coming to Brandon. And we have a Brandon Islamic Center here, and we are very welcoming place. And people are coming for prayers, and we have actually every day aftar, we call aftar. This is a breaking time. We have some food for the students, and for anybody is welcome there at the sunset time. So they are coming together there, and we are close to 40 to 50 people. Every day they are taking food from there, and we are praying night prayers together. So most of people, especially those newcomers, so they are enjoying and feeling the same home feeling here when they get all these things are happening here in Brandon.
You talked about the Brandon Islamic Center. Why do you think it's important to have a place where people can come and gather in Brandon instead of having to drive to a bigger city like Winnipeg?
Actually, we have here this facility because overall, if you have this kind of center like mosque where the prayers are happening, so this is the main kind of need for the Muslims. I think Brandon, we have the facility, and we have permanent our imam leader who can lead the prayers. So I think most of community members, so they can come in our mosque, and for that reason they don't need to go to Winnipeg. So this is good for here that we are providing those services here on their doorstep.
How are you preparing for the Eid celebration at the end of the month?
I have already booked the dome building because I told you that we are right now close to 400 to 500 members with all including families, kids. So we actually booked the dome building this year again, and hopefully it will be good day. There will be no winter storm on that day, so everybody can come and join the prayers and celebrate that day. And we are hoping on April 10th is coming this year, that day.
Hopefully the forecast won't call for snow and wind that day for sure.
Definitely.
Now, if people want to know where to go and if they want to take part in these events in Brandon, how can they find out?
We have our website Brandon Islamic, bicmanitoba.ca. So they can find our website, and we have all information there. And we have our WhatsApp group as well. So we actually talk to the community on regular basis and send all information, all the events which are happening in the community. So we send there as well.
Amir, thank you so much for joining us and sharing more about Ramadan in Brandon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Amir Farouk is the president of the Brandon Islamic Center. Well, the sun is shining, but temperatures in Manitoba are below seasonal, so it might not quite feel like it, but the first day of spring is here. For most of us, though, it's nothing more than words on a calendar. CBC's Jason Osler hit the streets to find out what makes you actually feel like it's spring.
When it's actually sunny out, there's blossoms. The trees are starting to turn green. You're like, oh, things are alive. Right. Okay, I can do stuff. And then, I feel motivated to actually clean or make art or do whatever. So once that starts to manifest, I'm like, yes, it's spring. It's time.
What makes you feel like it's now spring?
I think when it gets up to temperature, consistently, it's 20 and sunny consistently, not up and down. When it's been a week and a half or two and you don't need a jacket at all, and it's just then it gets into where there's no jacket for months until the fall.
The geese
Last night I actually just noticed 2 geese fly by my house, and you forget hearing them until you actually hear them again.
First time you see that goose or you hear it, you're like, okay, now it's spring.
Well, it's more like spring is coming. I look forward to when it comes. I don't know when it's actually going to come, but it's soon, right?
What makes you feel like it's now spring?
I guess when people don't really look like they're in pain when they're taking a walk outside and they're walking in a hurry to get home. Just like slow living.
I didn't know it was spring, but I had to think about it.
So what makes you feel like spring has arrived?
I would say allergies. They started acting up. My whole family is coughing up right now. So yeah, allergies would be a big sign.
So when you hear your family sneezing a lot, you're like, oh, it's spring?
Yeah.
When I look out the window and it's like 7 o'clock and I'm like, it feels like the sun's only starting to set when I can go outside, and it still feels like my day feels longer and I can go out and just do stuff late into the night. No, my day feels more fulfilling.
I had no clue it was spring.
What is it that makes you feel like it's spring?
When I start getting invited to picnics with friends or to hang out outside, just as soon as I get that first invite that's like, oh, do you want to go to the park or something, then I know it's spring and it's starting to get warmer.
That was CBC's Jason Osler asking what makes you feel like it's spring. I have to say, for me, the geese resonated. I did see a few geese waddling around Winnipeg, I believe yesterday, but also those green buds on the trees always get me so excited for spring and then for summer if we're looking ahead. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen filling in today for Marjorie Dowhouse. If you're watching the Juno Awards this coming weekend, and you should watch the Juno Awards this coming weekend, you might witness some history. Calgary jazz vocalist Katie George is nominated in the Vocal Jazz Album of the Year category. If she wins, it would mark the 3rd year in a row that she's taken the award. Katie's latest album is called You're Like You Two, and from it, here's Yesterday.
Yesterdays, days I knew as happy, sweet sequestered days, olden days, golden days, days of man, romance, and love, then gay youth was mine, truth was mine, joy is free and flaming life forsooth was mine, sad am I, glad am I, for today I'm dreaming of then gay youth was mine, truth was mine, joy is free and flaming life forsooth was mine, sad am I, glad am I, for today I'm dreaming of yesterday.
Out of Calgary, that was Katie George with her take on Jerome Kern's classic song, Yesterdays. Her album, You're Like You Two, is nominated for Vocal Jazz Album of the Year, and you can find out if she wins the category for the third year in a row this weekend when the Juno Awards are handed out in Halifax. Of course, you can watch the Juno Awards on your CBC television on CBC Gem, or you can go to cbc.ca/music for more information about the Junos. It's sure to be an amazing show. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse here on Radio Noon. And coming up on the show, an organization in Dauphin is rushing to help 5 families from Ukraine settle here before a key federal program ends on March 31st. We're going to hear from them coming up just after your CBC local news, taking a look at your weather here. Below seasonal for this first day of spring, so some cooler temperatures across southern Manitoba, and that wind. It's going to be windy. Northwest 40 to 60, could see gusts to 70. But of course, Riley Lachuk will be back to go through all that. Your CBC local news is next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at -5 degrees with mostly sunny skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Winnipeg police are still on the scene of the city's latest homicide. They've been at the home in the 1200 block of Selkirk Avenue since 4:30 yesterday afternoon. Police have identified the man as 56-year-old Edgar Allen Bear. They say he was from Peguis First Nation and had been living in Winnipeg. Police say they found him deceased in the house. Neighbors say they saw more than 10 police cruisers and dozens of police at the house last night. Anyone with information who can help is asked to contact police. 2 of 3 Winnipeg pools slated for closure got a slight reprieve at City Hall today. Windsor Park Pool in St. Boniface will stay open for at least 2 more summers. It's now set to remain in operation for the 2024 and 2025 seasons. That'll give time for the city to start consultations on a potential new aquatic facility at St. Boniface. Another outdoor pool in St. Boniface, Happy Land, is still expected to close. Meanwhile, Eldon Ross Pool in Brooklands will stay open until the end of August. A new report from the World Meteorological Organization confirms 2023 was the warmest year on record. It warns continued climate inaction will contribute to increasing food insecurity, severe economic losses, and the displacement of millions. Ben Shingler has more.
The year 2023 set new records for every single climate indicator.
Records weren't just broken. In some cases, they were smashed, not just for temperature, but also ocean heat, sea level rise, and glacier retreat. Celeste Saulo is the World Meteorological Organization's Secretary General.
The climate crisis is the defining challenge that humanity faces.
The hot temperatures were also seen in Canada, where we just had our warmest winter on record. Dave Phillips with Environment Canada says that trend will likely continue into the spring.
If you look at April, May, and June, is showing warmer than normal from coast to coast to coast.
He says the global weather pattern El Nino helped drive up temperatures last year. But even as it recedes, more records will be broken because of climate change. Ben Shingler, CBC News, Montreal.
And the company that makes Ben & Jerry's ice cream, Dove Soap, and Vaseline has announced a round of job cuts. Unilever is eliminating 7,500 jobs and has announced plans to shrink its ice cream business. The British multinational employs more than 125,000 people worldwide. It says most of the cuts will affect office staff and middle management. And that's your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, you can go to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Ben & Jerry's.
I know. You should have seen my face. But before you go, tonight is the first, it's the first day of spring.
That's right.
But officially it happens later tonight. What's your favorite sign of spring?
Put me on the spot. Don't make me choose.
What shouts spring?
What
for Matt
shouts
Humphrey?
it out?
Yeah.
Shouting it.
Nice.
Loud. I like blossoms.
Yeah.
I like cherry blossoms.
Oh, that's lovely. I like the...
Oh, you know what it is?
Okay.
Sorry to cut you off.
Go for it.
What do you like?
The little green buds on the trees. My favorite.
Yeah. That's pleasant. I get allergies.
Oh, okay. So that's your sign of spring.
That's my
Allergies.
sign of spring.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing, Matt.
There you go.
CBC's Matt Humphrey with a look at your local news. Riley Lachuk, weather specialist, joins us now. Riley, I got to ask you the same question.
So spring arrives tonight. And I'm going to dodge the question a little bit just by saying that we're really not going to feel
spring-like
So we're not
temperatures.
seeing any
So
signs of
We're
spring.
not really going to get those signs of spring.
Okay, good
across
dodge.
Manitoba.
Nice. What will we see?
So I'm going to start by talking about the Hudson Bay Coast, in particular the Churchill region, because we've had a blizzard warning in place now for about 24 hours in
Definitely
the Churchill
not
region.
a sign of spring.
Definitely not a sign of spring. In fact, very windy conditions along the Hudson Bay coast. Right now, we're at minus 27 in Churchill with some light snow falling at the moment. Northwest winds gusting to 54 right now. We've seen some pretty strong gusts. We do have a blizzard warning still in place for the Hudson Bay coast. This as that area of low pressure that moved through the region through yesterday continues to exit the province, leaving us with some very windy conditions and high pressure building in behind that. So we do get mainly sunny skies for much of Manitoba today. A few clouds here and there. Otherwise, we're not looking at least sky condition-wise, not a terrible day. Mix of sun and cloud, but it's going to be those winds and the very cold conditions that usher in behind that really are going to make you question whether spring is actually here or not. So looking ahead as we get into the next couple of days. So we're looking at a clear sky pretty much as we get through into the morning tomorrow. Not a lot of weather to talk about. Winds die down as we get through the night tonight. Could see a little bit of passing cloud first thing in the morning on Thursday. Otherwise, we're looking at really mainly sunny and cold conditions across Manitoba as we get into Wednesday and Thursday. Winds looking at northwest gusting to 60 through the Red River Valley today. Northern Manitoba, northwest gusting to 40, with the exception of Churchill, where we could see some gusts up to 80 through the afternoon today. Winds do start to die down as we get through the night tonight. So by the time we get to the morning tomorrow, northwest 20, gusting 40, before we see those really dying off by the time we get to about lunchtime on Wednesday. Right now, minus 5 in Winnipeg, minus 3 in Brandon, Thompson's minus 18, and minus 27s in both Tadoule Lake and Churchill at the moment. In southern Manitoba, we are looking at falling temperatures as we get through the afternoon today. So what we are at in Winnipeg right now is about the warmest we're going to get. By the time we get to about 4 o'clock, we're at minus 8. Falling as we get into the night tonight. So temperatures in Swan River, Dauphin, dropping to about minus 7 through the afternoon today. Brandon through the Melita region, still a chance to get up close to freezing, but we'll see those temperatures drop, yes, as we get into the afternoon today as well. So we're looking at a high of minus 10, Chloe, for your Wednesday. Thursday, minus 5. Friday, Saturday, minus 6. And some cloud building in for Sunday and minus 5 degrees. Normal for this time of the year is plus 1.
Don't tell me that.
So, yeah, as I mentioned, signs of spring. Yeah, maybe yes. First day.
Okay.
This we do get the first full day of spring tomorrow, but it's not going to feel like spring across Manitoba.
I'm just going to take the word sunshine out of what I heard, and I'll just keep that close.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, the sun will be nice because we're at that time of the year where we get more direct sunlight, which means it's going to feel warm at least, even if the temperature itself isn't that warm.
Perfect. Riley, thank you so much.
No problem.
It's your CBC weather specialist, Riley Laychuk. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse. The clock is ticking for organizations helping Ukrainians settle in Manitoba. The federal government's Canada-Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel program has helped over 23,000 Ukrainians come to Manitoba since the war broke out. March 31st is the last day of the program, which offered key supports for Ukrainians upon arrival in Canada, like a 3-year visitor visa and easier access to work permits. Pam Iwanchesko is a volunteer with the Parkland Ukrainian Family Fund in Dauphin and joins us now. Good afternoon, Pam.
Hi there.
Pam, what do the next couple of weeks look like for you as you're approaching this deadline?
Well, we've certainly kept ourselves busy up until this point. We've definitely had a little bit of an influx with people wanting to move to Dauphin from Winnipeg. They've arrived in Winnipeg and the job market is tight there with all of the Ukrainians who have settled in Winnipeg. And so, they're looking for other options. And certainly in the rural communities, there are possibly a few more job options, like based on farms and things like that. Of course, our farming season is coming up, so farmers will be looking for help. So there is possible opportunities for jobs for those who can do that sort of thing. So yeah, we've definitely had a little bit more interest in these last couple of weeks.
How helpful has the program been for the families you've helped settle? I know that you've settled a lot of families in Dauphin through this program.
Yeah, at the end of the month, we'll have had we'll be at 64 families that will have come and settled in the Dauphin area. So yeah, it's about 175 people, which is, a crazy influx of people that we have never had the opportunity to have. And many of the families who first arrived 2 years ago, have already got their permanent residency status, have purchased homes. So they're really wanting to settle here. They really love the community, and it's certainly been, a steep learning curve for all of us on the Parkland Ukrainian Family Fund, our group of volunteers, but we certainly appreciate these people wanting to come here with a strong Ukrainian connection. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to welcome these families to our community. And like you say, the federal program has helped because it certainly has paid for things that we wouldn't have been able to. We've helped families settle in terms of helping them pay for rent and getting them settled in the community itself. But the federal programming dollars help them with medical examinations and things like that are required by our IRCC.
So what will the end of the federal program mean for the Parkland Ukrainian Family Fund?
I'm not sure how to answer that yet. I guess we'll find out by the end of next week with regards to how or not it will be or won't be helpful to us with more families coming. So yeah, they do have a little bit of an income with regards to being able to settle in the communities. That they are able to have a hotel in whichever city they come to in Canada for up to 2 weeks to try to find themselves suitable accommodations and jobs and things like that. And they help, like I say, it helped pay for the medical examination and, be able to the provincial governments also helped out with regards to giving them medical health cards and setting up a help center at the Best Western Hotel at the airport there. So those were huge things that we didn't have to do from a volunteer standpoint. But yeah, I'm not sure where it's going to go from there.
And you might also not have an answer for this question, but from what you've heard and what you know, how much more difficult will it be for families to move from Ukraine to Dauphin after March 31st? Are there any folks talking about family members who are still in Ukraine?
Yeah, and certainly that's a big question mark. We do have lots of single moms here where their husbands are stuck basically in Ukraine because of the martial law. So if you're between the ages of 16 and 60 and able to fight, you could be summoned to the front line. So, those individuals are stuck in Ukraine and can't come until this war is over. So I'm certain that there would be quite a few people who would be wanting to come after this is over. And we've sort of set up a contingency/emergency fund that we've put aside for now in case that situation arises for the families that we are supporting already, not for any new families, but for the ones that have been here.
Pam, as a volunteer, I'm interested in your experience. What's been the most rewarding part of helping these families find a new home in Dauphin?
Just the feelings that you can't really describe. These people have really become our friends. When they first arrive, and we've had a community that has been so giving, from the businesses to individual contributions. So our fund has been able to raise over $600,000 in cash and grants alone to help these families succeed, and having them get their permanent residency, for example, which is a plethora of paperwork and just hurdles to overcome. And when they finally get that permanent residency card, it is so rewarding to see the families start a new life here. And all of these families are quite young children, and they just want a better life for their children where they're not going to be struck with the burden of bombs and things like that, and that we know they're in a safe community now and are contributing to society. I think that's one of the most important things, is that they are so humble when they get here, and that they're so they're just overcome with emotions by how giving our community has been. I mean, when they arrive, we give them a full furnished apartment or house to live in, and they never anticipated or expected any of that, and being able to help them find jobs and things like that. So yeah, it's just an emotional roller coaster every time a new family arrives.
Pam, thank you for your work, and thank you for joining us today on Radio Noon.
You bet.
Pam Iwanchesko is a volunteer with the Parkland Ukrainian Family Fund in Dauphin, and CBC has reached out to the Manitoba's Labour and Immigration Minister, Malaya Marcelino, for comment on how this impacts the province's supports.
Brady Keeper and Bridget Laquette both played here. What future star will you see this year? The Manitoba Indigenous Cultural Education Centre annual Indigenous Minor Hockey Tournament is back, March 22nd to 24th at the Hockey for All Centre. The best Indigenous minor hockey players in Manitoba come together in competition, and CBC is a proud sponsor. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, 97.9 FM in Brandon, and 100.9 FM in Thompson. And hello to our viewers watching on our YouTube live stream. Now, Nova Scotia singer-songwriter Matt Hughes is here to remind us that if you're feeling a little off, it's okay to take a bit of time to recover. Here's Matt with his latest song, Sick Day.
There goes another day, and you still feel the same as before. A sink full of dirty dishes and a mountain of clothes on your floor. We'll get them next time, but that's all for today. You've already clocked out, and you got nothing left in the tank. Try to save up to go somewhere special. Give it all to your landlord instead. Make plans on your one day off, but spend the whole day stuck in your bed. You'll get them next time, but that's all for today. You've already checked out, and you got nothing left on your plate. Well, when you're down and out and you're done with it, or when you just need a break, go ahead and call in sick. When you're at your wit's end and you're done with it, why don't you let yourself go? Why don't you call in sick? They call it earning a living, but I swear we all deserve better than this. It's not what you had in mind, just being so tired from just trying to exist. We'll get them next time, but that's all for today. Get your boss on the line, let him know you're not coming into work today. Well, when you're down and out and you're done with it, or when you just need a break, go ahead and call in sick. When you're at your wit's end and you're done with it, why don't you let yourself go? Why don't you call in sick? Well, move back in with your folks, move out into the sticks, sell all of your stuff, become a full-on hermit, flake on all of your plans. You know you overcommit. Go ahead and take the day off, or just full-on quit. Yourself go. Why don't you call it insane?
Out of Halifax, that was Matt Hughes with Sick Day, a song that really takes you on a little journey there. Radio Noon, our journey, almost up for today, but coming up after the show is Unreserved, and today on Unreserved, we'll hear from Nova Kershane, who believes theater can help intergenerational trauma. But a play that heals doesn't have to be serious. Kershane is an Anishinaabe and a co-director at the Native Youth Theatre program here in Winnipeg. The program provides free after-school performance classes to Indigenous youth. Kershane has seen firsthand how theatre can shed a different light on difficult subjects and unleash young creativity. Here's Kershane with Unreserved's Rosanna Deerchild.
I think working with kids, so we're going to say about 2 or 3 generations away from residential schools. While those impacts are still prominent, so many of our kids are still in foster care, I'm already seeing that shift within our kids, and that the action therapy that they talk about in classes, the cultural things that they do at school. And so that impacts the stories and their storytelling. For example, I think it was last year, Ashley Cook and Victoria Perry were 2 teachers for our Roots class, the youngest class that we have, ages 8 to 10. And they helped these kids develop a story, a futuristic story, which I thought was just adorable and amazing, called A Powwow in Space. And it was about a young robot who didn't want to be a part of the assembly line anymore. And then while he was sorting mail, found a flyer that said, "Come to this powwow in space." And so that's the journey of our young person going to that powwow and finding a Nibinabe Kwe, or mermaid in space. And she danced and hypnotized people to do what she wanted to do. And so it was just a really fun, really forward way of thinking. And I think we want to see those kinds of things come out from our kids. And it's important to look back, but we can look forward.
That's beautiful. I want to go to that powwow.
It looked fun.
Nova Kershane is Anishinaabe and the co-director of the Native Youth Theatre program here in Winnipeg. And you can hear the rest of her interview and more guests from the world of Indigenous theatre on this week's episode of Unreserved. The show airs today just after Radio Noon at 1 p.m. or, of course, you can listen anytime on the CBC Listen app. You're tuning in to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. And earlier in the show, we heard from Pam Iwanchesko, who's a volunteer with the Parkland Ukrainian Family Fund in Dauphin. And we were speaking about the ending of the federal government's Canada-Ukraine Authorization for Emergency Travel program that's so far helped over 23,000 Ukrainians come to Manitoba since the war broke out. Now that ends on March 31st. That program ends on March 31st. And CBC did reach out to Manitoba's Labour and Immigration Minister, Malaya Marcelino, for a comment, and we received this. Quote, "Manitoba is a special place with a long history of Ukrainian settlement and of stepping up for others when they are in need of help. While the circumstances Ukrainians have come to Manitoba for are not ideal, those who have settled here have brought tremendous value to our communities and province. Ukrainians arriving to Manitoba after April 1st will be able to access general settlement services available to all newcomers to Manitoba. Our government is working with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, Manitoba Provincial Council to offer transitional supports to Ukrainians arriving after April 1st, 2024. These will include welcome and orientation services, housing supports, and English language supports. End quote. That is a statement from Labour and Immigration Minister Malaya Marcelino. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marjorie Dowhouse here on Radio Noon. Today and tomorrow, former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney will lie in state near Parliament Hill. Mulroney died on February 29th at the age of 84. With two majority governments, his Progressive Conservatives governed Canada from 1984 to 1993. When MPs returned to the House of Commons yesterday, party leaders rose to pay tribute to Canada's 18th Prime Minister, while Mulroney's family looked on from the gallery. Afterwards, his son spoke outside the Commons. In this clip, you'll hear from Mark and then Nicholas Mulroney.
As we kind of think about it, my dad came here when he was a 17-year-old boy for Youth for Deaf, and he kind of was eager to get back here, and he did, and he enjoyed every minute of the back and forth parliamentary process, the debate, and seeing it today and seeing how it was. We obviously understand what drew him here, but what also he loved about it. And for us, sitting up in the gallery and hearing everybody speak so positively, probably not what he was used to, but he would have loved it, and we did as well. And everybody kind of taking the time to think through and to say these positive words, we can't be more thankful. So thank you very much.
One last point, it's just been incredibly humbling to hear the outpouring of support from friends and former foes. Being the youngest member of the family, this is certainly not something I grew up used to, and it's especially for the grandkids, they get to see and experience something so special. We're truly honored from all of the people across the country and internationally that have taken the time to reach out to say nice things and words of support. So just want to thank everybody on behalf of the family.
That was Nicholas Mulroney, and before that you heard Mark Mulroney. They're two of former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney's 4 children. When the news of Mulroney's death first became public, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau offered these words for the family and for all Canadians.
He was committed to this country, loved it with all his heart, and served it for many, many years in many different ways. He had the courage to do big things, whether it was negotiating free trade with the United States and then with Mexico, all the while standing up to protect Canada's environment, to push back against the Americans on acid rain, to stand strong on the international stage, standing up for Canada's values against communism and authoritarianism, against apartheid, leading with our values around the world. He was incredibly generous and effective in advising me and our government on the renegotiation of NAFTA during some very challenging years, where not just the advice and strategic counsel he gave me and us, but also active with his contacts as part of Team Canada to make sure that the messages on how important the friendship and the relationship between Canada and the U.S. was, not just for Canada but the U.S., was key. His commitment to this country as a proud Quebecer, to bringing people together and demonstrating the impact, but also the necessity of Canada on the world stage and the pride that Canadians could take in it, was something that has left its mark. He shaped our past, but he shapes our present, and he will impact our future as well. He was an extraordinary statesman, and he will be deeply, deeply missed.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau speaking at the beginning of March about the death of former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. The funeral for Brian Mulroney will be on CBC this coming Saturday. You're listening to Radio Noon. The time is 12:58, coming to the end of the show here. Faith Fundal, host of Up to Speed, stops in for a little update. What's coming up?
Chloe, do you remember the toilet paper debacle during the pandemic?
I do.
It is what comes up for our next guest on the show this afternoon. As we talk about the Imperial Oil pipeline closure, essentially he says there's enough fuel, don't panic buy. So
right.
We'll get details on the show this afternoon.
Toilet paper, fuel. Fascinating.
There you go.
Thanks, Faith.
Thank you.
Up to Speed is coming up this afternoon from 3 till 6 here on CBC Radio 1. Thank you to the team, Corey Funk, Kalkadan Mulligeta, Matt Humphrey, Riley Laychuk. Travis Peterson is running our YouTube live stream. Dylan Longhurst is our tech. Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson are our show producers. I'm Chloe Friesen. Coming up next, Unreserved.
Nelly Furtado.